Is that what we're waiting for right now, is for China to step up and respond to this?
Well, look, I'll get to what's going on in Poland tomorrow in the next 2 days, but it really links up with what you're talking about, because people here are asking which Donald Trump is going to show up this week. Is it going to be the one that listens to his mainstream advisors, or is it the one who's the insurgent and disruptor? And on the question of China, he has really managed his China relationship much better than one would have thought during the campaign. And now it's the real test. Can he cash in on the relationship that he's built with President Xi Jinping and coax China into a more active response to North Korea? Because his military people are telling him, you don't really have a good alternative here. You hit North Korea, and there are going to be hundreds of thousands of South Korean dead in Seoul, South Korea. You don't really have a good military option. So your option is putting pressure on the Chinese to actually put more pressure on the North Koreans. So you have to watch at the G20 this week whether he can pull that off.
Fred, does anything change with the strategy, given that this missile can theoretically reach the United States via Alaska? I mean, they've had the capability to effectively throw nuclear bombs on 40 million people Tokyo and 10 million people Seoul, South Korea. Does our strategy change merely because of the distance this missile can travel?
I don't think just yet, because they've now shown they can travel further, and they can barely reach Alaska if they're lucky. But they haven't shown they can actually mount a warhead on it and that it's going to work effectively. So I think one has time there. What it does is it does put more pressure on Trump to put more pressure on China. So there definitely is a need to show some movement in that direction. But I actually think you're going to see some of the pressure on him from that go away in the next couple of days and have a lot more emphasis on the three things happening here. Number one, his speech tomorrow in Poland, which the White House is calling the most important foreign policy speech of his presidency. Number two, his bilateral meeting with Russia's Vladimir Putin, and then the G20 meeting. So what you're seeing is just a lot of international tests for a president where our allies and friends are still questioning, do we have an overall strategy for our global approach?
I thought it was interesting, Fred, that over the past weekend, President Xi was in Moscow meeting with Mr. Putin. I'd like to get your thoughts on what you suspect they were talking about and how that complicates the calculus. But I'd like you to dive a little bit deeper on where you began, which is the idea that President Trump has managed his relations well with China so far. And I guess my questions would be, what does he have to show for that, number one? And number two, how do you filter into that assessment his tweet from this morning that was sort of dismissive towards what the Chinese had done with respect to North Korea? I almost said North Carolina, with respect to North Korea.
You know, it was dismissive, but at the same time, he didn't lash out in the way he has in the past in his campaign. He said perhaps China will put a heavy move on North Korea and end this nonsense once and for all. You know, that's not, he's been very careful not to go ad hominem against President Xi Jinping. During his campaign, don't forget, he talked about 44% tariffs to be slapped on China at the moment of his presidency. He talked about branding them as a currency manipulator. He was convinced he could get more out of them over time by building a relationship, not humiliating the Chinese leader in the year that he has his big party Congress in the fall. So he hasn't got quite what he wants yet. You're starting to see more of a confrontation with China, with weapons being provided to Taiwan and other moves. So I think this will be a test of the relationship. But you also have a test. You also have a test here, which is he had a very bad first trip to Europe, where he questioned the whole collective defense of NATO. So people here are going to be waiting to see which president comes here. Isn't going to be the president that calls Europe on climate and trade issues and wants more of a confrontation. or is he going to come here as the president who's going to lead the alliance in terms of NATO defense and in terms of more our traditional role?
Hey there, thanks for checking out CNBC on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of the day's biggest stories. You can also click on any of the videos around me to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.